Think about the last decision you made today, the restaurant you chose, the thing you bought, the yes you said. Now ask yourself, was that actually you?
I used to think I was good at this, careful, deliberate, and then I started paying attention and I realized how many of my choices were T.
What if the most dangerous influence isn't the one you can see hypoid? It's the one that already sounds like your own voice.
Welcome to the Life Architect podcast.
Let's get into it.
What if I told you that the last major decision you made, perhaps a purchase you spent hours researching or
a commitment that totally consumed your weekend?
Right, exactly. What if I told you that choice was actually decided for you by a complete stranger who was manipulating a primal circuit in your brain?
It's a heavy thought because normally when we talk about human autonomy, we operate under this very comforting assumption of absolute conscious control.
We do. We picture the mind as this highly secure command center, right? Information enters, we logically evaluate the variables, and then we, deliberately choose our course of action. It's a deeply reassuring narrative.
Well, it's reassuring because it forms the bedrock of our individual identity. We naturally assume we are the sole sovereign authors of our actions. Without that assumption, the whole concept of personal agency just kind of begins to unravel.
But see, when you examine the empirical field observations, specifically the ones documented in Robert Cialdini's research, that sovereign command center starts to look a lot more like a mirage. We are forced to look at a landscape of human decision-making that is heavily mechanical.
And that brings us to the core of what we're doing today.
Exactly. The central question we are unpacking today is uncomfortable, but absolutely vital. Are the choices we make on a daily basis truly our own, or are we operating on automatic, deeply embedded psychological triggers that others can pull without our awareness?
And it's a question that challenges the very foundation of the rational human being. What makes this examination so compelling is that, we are drawing from research that didn't just happen in sterile university labs.
Right, no clipboards and two-way mirrors here.
Exactly. This data emerges from the field, from infiltrations into sales organizations, fundraising campaigns, environments where professionals survive strictly by engineering a yes from the public.
And my position today is firmly rooted in that clinical reality. I argue that human decision-making is fundamentally reliant on predictable mechanical shortcuts, and these shortcuts constitute a biological vulnerability built into every single human brain.
Okay, but
let me just frame this. Look at the modern stimulus environment. It is overwhelmingly, exponentially complex. The human brain simply cannot consciously evaluate every single variable of every decision it faces daily without suffering complete cognitive paralysis. It had to develop automatic response patterns just to survive.
Sure, basic survival.
Right. This isn't a personal failing, It's not a flaw in character or intellect. It's a necessary biological mechanism. We are literally wired for the automatic yes.
Well, I approach this from a completely different vantage point. While I freely acknowledge that these automatic patterns and cognitive heuristics exist, we couldn't cross a busy street without them, I argue they do not govern conscious, deliberate individuals in substantive matters.
You don't think so?
No, I really don't. We possess a prefrontal cortex. We are capable of slow, analytical, deliberate reasoning. I maintain that a careful person can recognize these environmental cues, apply a little cognitive friction, and keep true agency over their choices. We are not automatons blindly rolling down a track laid out by a marketer.
I understand the appeal of relying on that, deliberate thinking as a defense. But let me offer a perspective from ethology, the study of animal behavior in natural environments.
Okay.
There is this classic observation involving maternal turkeys. They are fiercely protective, highly attentive mothers. But researchers discovered that this entire complex nurturing response is triggered by a single isolated variable, just one thing.
The sound of the chicks, right?
Yes, exactly. The cheep, cheep sound of a baby chick. If a chick makes that sound, the mother cares for it. If it doesn't, she might ignore it or even aggressively attack it.
Wow.
It gets weirder. To test this, researchers introduced a stuffed replica of a polecat, which is the turkey's natural predator. Predictably, the mother turkey attacked it on sight, but then they placed a small audio recorder inside the stuffed polecat that, playing that specific cheep sound.
And her behavior completely flipped?
Entirely. She ceased the attack and actually gathered her natural enemy underneath her to keep it warm. Turn off the sound and she attacks it again. It is a behavioral API, basically, an input that guarantees an output.
Okay, the turkey observation is fascinating. I'll give you that. But comparing avian instinct to human cognition kind of ignores the vast evolutionary leap in our neurobiology.
Does it, though?
I think so. You're describing a rigid, blindly mechanical tape playing in a bird. Humans have metacognition. We can think about our own thinking. I mean, I consider myself a highly vigilant person. When I am being pitched to, my analytical defenses engage.
You read the fine print?
I read the fine print. I look for the underlying motive. I am a careful person and I notice when I'm being pitched to. I don't fall for this. I firmly believe my intellect serves as a shield against that kind of primitive manipulation. My internal desires ultimately belong to me.
See, if we look at the underlying mechanisms, I am just not convinced that the human intellect is the impenetrable shield you describe. I would assert that these triggers are designed specifically to bypass conscious reasoning entirely.
To go around the shield?
Exactly. They don't engage your intellect, they circumvent it. So let's move away from the turkeys. Let's examine how this actually manifests in our daily routines. I want to test the resilience of that intellectual shield against the environments we navigate every single week.
Bring it on. I welcome the challenge. I think you'll find that analytical individuals are highly resistant to these manufactured environments.
All right, let's test that assumption with a really ubiquitous scenario, the restaurant environment.
Okay.
When the human brain is faced with uncertainty or an overwhelming array of novel choices, it drastically conserves metabolic energy by delegating the decision to the crowd. If a large group of people is doing something, the brain just assumes, hey, this must be the correct, safe action.
Sure, herd mentality.
Right, and the source material cites this brilliant study conducted in Beijing restaurants. Managers didn't change any ingredients. They didn't lower prices. They simply placed a small asterisk next to certain dishes on the menu to indicate that this was one of the most popular items.
And people just followed the asterisk.
Exactly. Sales for those specific dishes increased by 13 to 20% across the board. The patrons entirely bypassed their own independent taste evaluations and let the anonymous crowd dictate their consumption.
Okay, I concede that in a loud, chaotic environment, people might engage in cognitive offloading, but I would argue that is a calculated efficiency, not manipulation.
A calculated efficiency?
Yes. When I go out to eat, I analyze a menu based on macronutrients, specific ingredients, my own dietary requirements. A little star on a page indicating popularity isn't going to override my nutritional logic. That might work on someone completely disengaged, but it doesn't work on someone actively monitoring their inputs.
Is that intellectual rigor truly constant, though? Consider the reality of cognitive depletion. Imagine you are traveling. You've had back-to-back meetings. You are in an unfamiliar city. The cafe you step into is incredibly loud. The line is moving fast, and you have exactly 3 minutes to order. Does your analytical brain really have the bandwidth to cross-reference ingredients in that exact moment?
Well, in a state of extreme decision fatigue, I suppose the calculus changes.
It has to, right?
Yeah, actually, I can think of a moment earlier this week. I was at a new transit hub, completely overwhelmed by the noise, and I was rushing to catch my connection. I saw a sandwich on the digital menu that was highlighted simply as the house favorite.
Did you analyze its nutritional profile before you ordered it?
No. No, I didn't. I just pointed to it. I needed the friction of the decision to disappear. I didn't even process what kind of cheese was on it until I was already sitting down and eating it.
So the shield dropped.
Yeah, I see the mechanism you are highlighting now. In a moment of high pressure and cognitive uncertainty, I completely dropped my analytical criteria and deferred to the manufactured consensus.
Precisely. Your brain required a shortcut. It scanned the environment for the signal that communicated this is what everyone else considers safe and optimal. And a designer placed that exact signal on the board, knowing precisely how a depleted human brain would react to it.
So how do do you fight that?
What we observe in individuals who successfully navigate this isn't that they never feel the pull of the crowd. It's that they build a specific cognitive habit. They force a pause. When you see a label claiming an item is the most popular, you have to mentally decouple the popularity from the product. You pause and ask yourself, what do I actually want, independent of what everyone else is doing?
Right. What do I want? Okay, that makes sense for low-stakes decisions like a lunch order. We offload minor choices to save energy for major ones. But surely you aren't suggesting this biological override applies to substantive, high-stakes environments?
I absolutely am.
Come on, when we are sitting alone at our computers in a quiet room, executing a significant financial transaction, that is when our analytical brain is fully engaged.
Let's examine that exact environment then, the online purchase. The human brain is profoundly motivated by the fear of losing something. Losing access to a resource registers in the amygdala as an existential threat, and that feeling is drastically more urgent than the prospect of gaining that exact same resource.
Loss aversion?
Yes, the material references an extensive analysis of 6,700 e-commerce sites. They tested every conceivable variable: free shipping offers, advanced search functions, color psychology, you name it.
And what won?
The absolute highest driver of conversions, universally, was limiting the quantity, informing the consumer that an item is in short supply.
Well, I understand this psychological mechanism there, but modern consumers have adapted to this. I mean, I consider myself a highly savvy online shopper.
I'm sure you are.
I am. I utilize browser extensions that track historical price data. I run side-by-side comparisons of technical specifications. When I see a flashing red banner telling me a product is selling out, my immediate conscious reaction is skepticism. I view it as a primitive marketing gimmick and I ignore it.
You are focusing entirely on your rational post-processing thoughts. I want to press you on the immediate physiological response.
Physiology?
Yes. Let's say you've spent an hour researching a piece of equipment. You are logically comparing warranties. Suddenly, the interface updates and a subtle red text appears. Only 2 left in stock. Before your rational brain dismisses it as a gimmick, what happens inside your nervous system?
Well, if I am being completely honest about the physiology, there is an immediate spike. My heart rate accelerates. There is a sudden, very real sensation of heat in my chest. Even though I know intellectually exactly what the UI designer is trying to do, it feels like a physical agitation.
It is a computational override. The blood flow shifts. Your focal length physically narrows. The brain is treating the potential loss of this item as an immediate crisis. And as that visceral, survival-based current surges, your cognitive, rational processes, the price comparisons, the warranty evaluations, are forcibly shut down.
To allocate all processing power to immediate acquisition.
Exactly.
It is incredibly difficult to admit, but I experienced this exact phenomenon just a few days ago. I was evaluating microphones for a broadcasting setup.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had 3 different tabs open, carefully reading frequency response charts. It was a purely analytical exercise. Then, on the primary site, a countdown timer appeared next to the stock indicator.
Did you finish reading the frequency charts?
No, I instantly closed the competing tabs. The urgency completely hijacked my process. I hit the buy now button because the thought of the item vanishing, the thought of having wasted my research time and losing the opportunity felt like an unbearable loss.
The tension between your intellect and your biology.
And biology entirely won, even though I knew it was a tactic.
Notice how the objective of the exercise shifted in milliseconds, right? The goal was no longer evaluating the utility of the microphone. The goal became possessing the resource before it disappeared. That artificial limit induced a competitive fury.
So how do we defend against that? Because you can't just ignore the physical spike.
No, you can't. That's impossible. The defense is recognizing the physiological panic as a symptom of external influence. You have to learn to separate the fear of loss from the actual utility of the item. When that timer or stock limit appears, you have to pause the interface and ask, if this limit didn't exist, would I still want this item for its actual function?
It is deeply unsettling to realize how easily a few lines of digital code can manufacture a physical state of panic in my own body.
It is.
But I want to draw a hard line here. We're discussing commercial transactions, right? Restaurants and retail. These are inherently adversarial environments where we expect to be sold to. but in our personal and professional relationships. In the nuanced social dynamics of a workplace, we operate differently. We steer our own social ships.
Okay, let's pivot to the workplace then. Human societies derived a massive evolutionary advantage from networks of obligation. We survived by sharing resources with the implicit understanding that the favor would be returned.
Sure, social contracts.
Right. Because of this, our brains are deeply conditioned by culture to find the state of being indebted highly uncomfortable. It creates an agonizing psychological weight. The source material details how this tribal conditioning is weaponized.
Weaponized how?
Well, in one foundational study, an individual simply gave a subject a 10-cent soda, completely unprompted. When that same individual later asked the subject to buy raffle tickets, the return on investment was 500%.
Just from a 10-cent soda?
Yes. Or consider the fast food chains that started giving children a small balloon before the meal instead of as a reward afterward. The parents felt so psychologically burdened by this uninvited favor to their child that they ordered 25% more food. Giving something first creates an uninvited debt, and the human brain will do almost anything to relieve that pressure.
Okay, but I analyze these interactions through the lens of social cohesion. If a corporate vendor sends me a branded calendar, I don't suddenly authorize a massive contract out of blind reciprocity. I recognize the asymmetry of the exchange. I appreciate the gesture, but I maintain my professional boundaries.
You are looking at overt corporate lobbying. Let's look at the subtle, invisible dynamics of your actual office. What happens when the uninvited favor comes from a peer?
A peer?
Yeah, imagine a colleague from another department, someone you rarely collaborate with, stops by your desk on a random morning. They hand you a gourmet coffee. They say they were in the lobby and just happened to think of you. You didn't ask for it. You didn't want it.
Oh, wow. This exact scenario played out in my office on Thursday.
Did it? And what was the follow-up request?
About 2 hours later, he sent me a message asking if I could help him manually format a massive, incredibly tedious data set for a presentation he was giving to the executives.
Did you have the bandwidth to take on his workload?
Absolutely not. I was already underwater with my own quarterly reports.
But did you format his data?
Yeah, I took on the extra work. I ended up staying an hour late to catch up on my own tasks.
See, if we rely on the theory of the rational, analytical actor, that decision makes zero sense. Why did you trade hours of your highly valuable time for a $5 beverage you never even requested?
Because the coffee was sitting right there on my desk, acting as a physical ledger of my debt. Every time I looked at it, I felt this intense social friction. Turning down his request, even though I was busy, felt profoundly rude. The asymmetry of the exchange just didn't matter in the moment. I formatted that spreadsheet entirely to relieve the agonizing emotional weight of that small, uninvited favor.
This is the invisible trigger in action. The rule of exchange is so deeply implanted in our tribal architecture that it entirely bypassed your value calculation. He selected the initial favor, and he dictated the terms of the return favor.
I was stripped of my autonomy.
Exactly. Yet you executed the action feeling like you were simply being a polite colleague. The defense against this requires immense social courage. You must mentally separate the favor from the request. When the ask arrives, you have to run a counterfactual in your mind. Would I agree to this request if the initial favor had never happened?
I have to admit, examining these 3 specific scenarios, the transit hub menu, the microphone purchase, the office spreadsheet, it's incredibly confronting.
It's not easy to look at.
No, because in every single instance, my rational, analytical thinking was completely subverted. The triggers mimic the inputs my brain naturally looks for, and I didn't even realize I was being steered.
And this brings us to the emotional climax of the material, the most dangerous, the most unsettling conclusion we must draw from understanding human influence.
What could be more dangerous than realizing our biology overrides our intellect?
The realization that the most effective, sophisticated influence does not feel like external pressure at all. When someone explicitly orders you to do something, your cognitive defenses immediately activate, right?
Of course, I push back.
But when an external force simply arranges the environmental variables so that your own biological programming executes the action, you never feel manipulated. The most dangerous influence in the world seamlessly disguises itself as your own internal voice.
That is a terrifying proposition. Because if that is true, how can we possibly trust our own internal compass? If I cannot trust the feeling of, I want this, or I should do this, what metric for reality is left? You are essentially arguing that our own internal monologue is compromised by the environment.
Look at the undeniable overlap in the behaviors we just dissected. When you pointed at that sandwich on the menu, you genuinely felt like you were making an efficient, optimal choice for your own schedule.
Right.
When you hit buy now on that audio equipment, that sudden adrenaline felt entirely organic. It felt like your own prudent desire to protect a valuable resource. And when you agreed to do that spreadsheet, the desire to alleviate the social guilt felt exactly like your own moral compass speaking to you.
It did. It really did. That is the core of the illusion. In the exact moment I bought that item online or agreed to my colleague's unfair request, the externally manufactured urgency felt indistinguishable from my own genuine desire.
Indistinguishable.
The levers they are pulling aren't attached to my physical limbs, they are wired directly into my feelings.
Precisely. The architect of the environment doesn't have to force you over the finish line. They simply provide the trigger, the asterisk on the menu, the countdown timer, the uninvited gift, and your own neurology does the heavy lifting. And because the ego needs to protect its illusion of control, your brain instantly generates a rationalization. You convince yourself it was your idea all along.
This represents a fundamental paradigm shift for me. I mean, my primary defense entering this discussion was that my intellect and my education protected me. I truly believe that because I am an analytical person, I was immune to these mechanisms.
A lot of people feel that way.
But I realize now that my supposedly deliberate choices were often just post hoc justifications for physiological reactions triggered by my environment. I wasn't reasoning, I was rationalizing a biological reflex.
And that realization is the first true step towards reclaiming agency. It is crucial to understand that we cannot surgically remove these mental shortcuts. We require them. If we had to meticulously analyze the thousands of micro decisions we face every day, our cognitive systems would crash.
We'd never get anything done.
Right. We need the automatic responses to navigate a complex world. The objective is not to eradicate our instincts. The objective is to develop the situational awareness to recognize when an external actor is purposely pulling those biological levers to serve their bottom line rather than our well-being.
It requires an entirely different metric for vigilance. It is no longer just about analyzing the product or the request. It is about relentlessly auditing my own sudden spikes in emotion. If I feel a sudden rush of panic to acquire something, or a sudden heavy sense of social obligation, or a sudden relief in abandoning my preferences to follow the crowd, I can no longer accept that feeling as truth.
No, you can't.
I need to treat that emotional spike as an active threat signature rather than a directive.
You must catch the mechanical tape right in the fraction of a second before it begins to roll.
So I want to turn this over to anyone listening to our exchange today. I challenge you to audit your own week. Look closely at your behaviors over the past few days. When you said yes to something recently, a sudden purchase, a lopsided favor, a choice you didn't quite have time to think through, was that truly your sovereign choice? Or was it a lever someone pulled at exactly the right moment? There is a vast architecture of influence documented in this material for those willing to look closer at the mechanics of their own minds.
The architecture of our decisions is largely invisible by design, but once you learn the shape of the triggers, you can finally begin to navigate the environment on your own terms.
Knowing doesn't fully protect me, but not knowing guaranteed I never even had a chance.